before, haven't you?
I haven't done it on StreamYard. Okay, we're live.
Let's do it.
All right,
Hello.
here we are. We're here. We got our coffee. Do you have coffee?
I just have a glass of water.
That's good. I have a thing of water here. So today the sun's out, thankfully, because it's been raining a lot, and really happy we got the beautiful sun. But we also have you, David,
A beautiful person.
a beautiful person from four corners of a page.
Hello.
Yeah. How are you doing?
I am doing well. It's actually about 9:30 here. So it's dark. The weather has started to pick up in Kuwait. So the lovely videos on the rooftop of my building that I've been doing have to be cancelled from now on because it's way too hot. It's humid, it's sticky. So this is my new setup from now on. It's good to see you though.
Great to see you. It's
Yep.
always a joy, and I thoroughly enjoyed your PowerPoint video, and it's great. You have a way of just bringing the community together, and I know a lot of us in YouTube and social media, we focus on the numbers, focus on subscribers, followers, likes, views. You, for some reason, the algorithm just hasn't brought you up, but I don't care about that because you are bringing people together regardless of that. You're bringing other big names in BookTube together, and we need more of that, and I appreciate
But you know
it.
what? I mean, I appreciate what you're saying. I think my subscribers are fine because
Yeah.
I did some research on this. I was curious to see what the average active channel gets. And it's quite surprising. The average channel in their whole lifetime, only 10% of them break 1,000 subscribers. So,
Wow.
I mean, yeah, it's much smaller than you'd expect. So,
Wow.
I think I'm perched on like 600 or something like that. I try
Yeah.
not to look. I do look because I'm a granular person who yeah. But
Yeah.
what I said in my first YouTube video, and I stand by this, is that the reason I started my channel is to talk to people like you. I mean, I didn't name you. That'd be a bit creepy in the first YouTube video.
Yeah.
This is my Thomas appreciation channel. No, but that's why I did it. And so the reason I made that YouTube video that you're referring to is just to kind of say thank you to all the friends I have accumulated along the way so far. And you know what? I felt a bit guilty because there's other people who I would have loved to mention in that video, but I stuck to just the people I've collaborated with so far. So for example, our mutual friend Joanna, who you were live streaming with 2 days ago, to be honest, should have been on there, but because I made that hard limit on myself of just people I've made videos with, I made it a little bit tighter on myself.
Yeah, no, I get it. I know. I made a little BookTube video a month, maybe 2 months ago, talking about booktubers I love, and I can only name a few in the video, whereas, I mean, I have so many that I love, but I can only put in, otherwise it'd be a 7-hour film. How do we look at so I just click comments, and then these are the folks that are live? Okay, this is great.
There's a private chat and there is a comment section, so we can see everyone down there. Chris, hi, Chris. Chris, I watched your video last night in preparation for this stream that we're doing, and I thought that your stuff, your comments on, I was going to say Prince of Nothing, wrong series, Empire of Silence, mirror my thoughts very closely. So thank you for your video, my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah. So today we're going to be talking about this book, Empire of Silence, by Christopher Ruocchio. This is the first book in a 7-book series that is finishing up in November. This is a sci-fantasy series. And yeah, why don't you tell us what this series is about, essentially, and kind of a spoiler-free, maybe an elevator pitch.
Okay. So I like how Christopher Ruocchio frames it, because the way he pitches it to people is he says, I've got it written down. I have a Google Doc. Can I show the Google Doc for a minute? I don't think the Google Doc has any information that is going to expose me. Last night, I made this Google Doc of everything I want to say about the series, or about the first book. But I'm also aware that there are hardcore fans of the series, right? People who've read all 6 multiple times. And so I kind of feel a bit, naive. And I'm a bit conscious of saying something silly because there are people who are so encyclopedic on this series. What I did do last night, I watched Chris's video, and then I watched Christopher Ruocchio's own summary of the first book. And I love what he says, because what he says was, Sun Eater is Anakin Skywalker if becoming Darth Vader were the right thing to do. I don't know if you'd heard that yourself.
Yes, I have, and I love that. That's what got me to essentially be like, okay, this is it.
Yeah.
I'm dropping everything and I'm reading this book.
So you know from that first page of the book that he is doomed from the jump. Things are not going to go well. Things are going to end in some way morosely, bleakly, and it's just about getting there. So in this first book, without going into major spoilers, we follow the first-person protagonist, Hadrian Marlowe, who is ostensibly an heir to a minor house in this broader empire. And the book is about his journey. The whole book is essentially a prologue, isn't it, to the main series, which is why I think a lot of people get a bit turned off by it. It's his young adult life, that first kind of 5 or 6 formative years of his teenage through early 20s experiences, I believe, and how he gets to be where he is going to be for the next kind of push of the series. At least that's how I understood it. Would that be fair? Did I miss anything?
I think that's good. Also, one thing that I heard because I made a review of this, a review / impression / reflection on this book. I might be repeating myself from that video in here for those of you who have seen it, but I got a wonderful comment. I can't remember exactly what it word for word, but it essentially said, this story takes place over hundreds of years. It's not just, from the beginning to the end, over the course of 2 years of someone's life. This is this is space, this is sci-fi, the technology, oh my gosh, what is the technology that they use to sleep? Cryo.
Basically, it's a cryo chamber, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Hadrian's story takes place over hundreds of years. So I think it would be appropriate to say this is a drop in the bucket compared to, eternity and just, So maybe it is a prologue. I haven't read book 2 yet. No. I don't know much about the series outside of book 1. So it's very interesting. So maybe once going back into, or when we go into book 2 and 3, maybe.
Yes.
Looking back at book 1. Oh yeah, that does seem like a prologue. Wow, that was long-winded. My bad. I'm warming up.
Well, I'm going to ask you because you characterized book 1 as a drop in the bucket, and can I be straightforward? Before our chat, we were debating about how we want to present our feelings about this book, because I think, and correct me if I'm saying anything wrong here, because I don't want to speak for you, Thomas, but I'm also going to speak for you.
Please.
We both enjoyed the book, and also have some minor to major gripes with it. I think we both enjoyed it broadly. We're both absolutely committed to book 2, but at the same time, I'll speak for myself now. So many people, so many booktubers that I love, this is one of their major favorite stories of all time, right? Mike's Book Reviews was one of the people I think that propelled the series forward. He discovered it quite early on. Shay in the channel, I think you really like it. Jake, Nerd Level Rising, he adores Sun Eater. So I think part of the problem here is that I went in with as the victim of my own expectations, because I went in expecting this book to be a 10 out of 10, and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't a 10 out of 10 experience for me. It was still broadly positive with some gripes. So for me, the drop of the bucket that we talked about as book 1 was a good time, but it wasn't the mind-blowing experience, to be utterly frank, that I was expecting it to be. And I'm wondering how Thomas, that kind of mirrors your expectations and your hype for the book and how you ultimately found it. Spoiler free.
It's funny you mentioned this. I have in my notes, which is extremely small because I didn't do my homework like you. I wanted to talk about the hype and the popularity of this book. I even think 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, I don't know exactly the time frame, but it wasn't that popular amongst booktubers. I initially discovered it through Mike's Book Reviews, and he is a reviewer that I genuinely trust.
Yes.
So if he says he likes something, I'm going to give it a shot. And that's, hearing that, and then I see more and more channels talk about this book and just praise it so highly that I'm like, okay, this may affect my expectations. This may set my expectations to maybe an unreachable level. I don't know, but it did affect my experience subconsciously. When I go into a book, I definitely want to go into it as objectively as possible and not compare it to something else, comparing it to something I once loved or loved a lot, or compare it to what I just recently read, or compare it to, BookTube and other reviews and praise. But with this situation, I couldn't help. Yeah, I don't know.
It's impossible because everyone has been talking about this, and the Broken Binding just released their three, I think the first 3 books in this lovely kind of gorgeous hardback that I bought. This was how excited I was for it. I bought that set without actually having read it. And when we were back and forth in our chat to each other saying, what shall we do to collaborate? And as soon as you mentioned Sun Eater, I was like, I don't need a reason. Yes, that's fantastic. Yeah. So I was quite surprised. And it's still an open question for me. Am I the victim of the hype? Am I a victim of myself giving into the hype? Or was the book just maybe not quite as positive overall as just in general? I still haven't quite made my mind up about that.
Yeah.
Shall we get into the reasons that maybe we spoiler free, that we maybe enjoyed the book without adoring the book?
Yeah. Why don't you make a point and then I'll bounce off you, because I can. There's so many.
And I have a Google Doc full of them. Did you want to say anything more about the hype conversation? Did I move us on too quickly there?
I mean, we could talk about just the broad aspect, but the algorithm, when you look up one review, YouTube just gives you all the other reviews and all the other channels talking about it. And you kind of create this little chamber of an echo chamber of like, oh, wow, this book really is really good. YouTube is telling me that. I'm not seeing anything negative. So then when I go into the book, and I have my own gripes and potential negatives, I feel kind of like, oh, am I a bad guy? Am I the only one? So I think that's the only thing left on that.
If the answer to are you a bad guy is yes, you are. Do some learning, do some healing.
Yeah, I know. I need to be better.
Can we click on the comment by, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing Tadeus?
Yes.
Because this kind of articulates how I felt about book 1. Broadly speaking, and this is not an original opinion, I've heard other people say this too. In fact, Chris, I think you said something similar. I really liked the first 25%, and I'm going to keep this utterly spoiler free. The first 25% are gorgeous and rich and atmospheric and gothic. And so when I was reading that first quarter of the book, I was totally immersed in that planet and what was going on in the dialogue and the conversations, because it all felt very rich. And I loved the last 25% of the novel as well. I thought, again, keeping this very light, the climax that book brings about almost doesn't, it feels different to what the book has given you so far. But that how everything comes to fruition at the end of the book, I also adored completely. I read the first quarter and the last quarter in one sitting. That bridging 50% took me a good few weeks to get through, which I think in the paperback version, it's about 300 pages. Forgive me. I found I really struggled with that middle half, or that bridging half. And it's ultimately because it's such a jagged novel. I think that's the word I was looking for when I was reading it, or maybe hollow or jagged. It's got a very episodic structure. And I don't mind episodic if episodic is done well, but it just felt like we were bouncing from thing to thing to thing to character to situation.
We weren't living in the moment. And I keep thinking of that one comment. It's like, well, you're not going to get Robin Hobb level pacing. You're not going to get Patrick Rothfuss level pacing where you sit in the moment. That's not what this story is about. This story takes place over hundreds of years.
Yes.
And so knowing that, I'm like, oh, okay. But being in the moment, not knowing that, reading the book for the first time, it's like, wow, can I sit in these moments a little longer, especially in, I'd say, that middle part. it felt very meandering, but also meandering is not a bad thing. I'm okay with
Not
just kind
necessarily,
of
yeah.
da 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 da. Like I don't mind watching a character get up and eat breakfast. But that actually didn't happen.
Yeah.
I wanted that.
Yeah.
I wanted to. I'm trying to not spoil things. Continue. Sorry, I want to go straight to spoilers.
Listen, two books that you love immensely, or authors, Robin Hobb and Patrick Rothfuss, and both of them do that meandering, lovely, slow language. I think for me, I wouldn't have minded that middle 50%. Again, trying to avoid spoilers. If I was more invested in that main character. I think that's what makes episodic fiction work. If you can get behind the central protagonist and say, okay, no matter what this character is doing, because I love this character, I'm going to stick with it. And I did not get that with Hadrian. I found Hadrian kind of unlikable, and I think that's on purpose. I don't think that's a flaw of Ruocchio's writing, but he was not a joy to stay with. And so when I'm getting all these quick-fire plot elements told by a character who clearly has a lot of growing up to do, it got a bit stale quite quickly, that middle 50%.
Yeah, it was. I said in my review video that it was very one note. The writing wasn't one note. I loved Ruocchio's writing.
Yeah.
But the pacing felt very just like you hit a piano and it's just like that one note staying flat, just boom.
Misery.
It was very, I don't know. I wasn't turning the pages, when I got to that middle part, I wasn't just like turning the pages. Like, I got to know more. Like this is I'm not connected to the character.
Yeah.
I wanted that middle part to be the second half of the book. And the first 25% of the book to be the first half of the book. I wanted to stretch those moments out.
Say that again for me. I didn't quite. You wanted the first 25% to be the.
I wanted the first 25% to be the first 50%. I know that sounds so weird. And then
I get that.
That middle part to be the last 50%.
Yeah.
I wanted the ending of the book. I don't know. It's hard because, like, again, you're telling an author that, like, hey, you needed to move these things around and I would have loved it more. But for me and how I like my stories, I love them drawn out, but not overstaying their welcome. And I don't like it when things happen like neck breaking pace. I want some investment.
Yes.
Midnight, how you doing? And then lovely Joanna here.
I don't know if I was mentioning on or off air that Joanna was one of the persons speaking to me, who's saying, "Listen, you got to speak your mind about these books. The authors will be okay with it. They're big boys and girls; they can handle it."
Yeah, we're not being negative for the sake of being negative. We want to be honest and not. We don't want to be positive for the sake of like, and just kind of join the crowd, but also we don't want to go against the crowd for the sake of going against the crowd. We just want to be ourselves.
But you know what? I don't know if we are against the crowd because I'm looking at some of the comments here before we move on. I'm looking at Tassos's comment. Books 2 through 6 are very powerful. The hype comes from them. Empire of Silence was slow, but I like that it exists because it makes the next books even stronger as it makes you invested. And this is what everyone tends to say, I think, is that Howling Dark, and I forget what book 3 is called, but the books that succeed book 1. Book 1 is all about getting that groundwork down. So if that's the case, I'm all on board because, again, and maybe I can swivel this back to some of the positives. That first 25% was glorious. I had such a wonderful reading experience getting to know Hadrian at the beginning, because I think Hadrian shines the most in the beginning. That tapestry of setting. I think Ruocchio, at least in this book, is better at that broad picture setting than he is scene by scene description. Because when we go to a new locale, that locale, the planet or the space or whatever it is, or a castle, the way that big location is described is phenomenal. And so when you open the book and you're getting this big Gothic backdrop, it's explained so evocatively. So I really love that. And again, the back 25%, and it's hard to talk about at this stage, does what it's trying to do so well that although I think we're sounding quite negative from the jump here, if the rest of the series does what those first and last quarter does, even better, then I'm sold, because I think it will be a positive experience overall.
Yeah, it's tough because also I finished Wheel of Time, which is again, if you heard me on my channel, I always say it's a 14-book series, and it's one story told in a continuous line.
Yeah.
There are no time jumps. It's very day-to-day pacing, and that took 2 years of my life to read, and I came to love that kind of pacing.
Yeah.
And I think going into Sun Eater, that's just what I wanted a little more and what I expected and was just hoping for, but I didn't get. And it just tainted my experience the further I got. Yeah. And I don't feel like I appreciated it enough. And it is tough when it's the first book in a series. Yeah. The first book does set the tone. And I'm not comparing it to Wheel of Time, but I'm using Wheel of Time as an example. Wheel of Time has a book one, as every series does. And it was good enough to keep me, enticed, wanting to read. Yes. After I finished book one of, this, Empire of Silence, I wasn't like, oh, I got to grab book two.
Yes, I would agree with that.
But I still want to read book two.
Yes.
I don't know. Did I make my point?
No, you made your point fabulously. There are some books that you finish and you want to immediately jump into the next one. Dungeon Crawler Carl, very, very different series, but you get that feeling.
Oh, yeah.
And other ones,
You're diving right into
like you needed a pause after this book, absolutely.
Sorry,
I think what Chris has said as well, sorry to jump between different comments. Chris says, it feels like people are reviewing the book in the context of the entire story rather than the book standing on its own merits, which encapsulates, I think, of what a lot of the booktube community seems to feel about book one, and why it's a slightly more, not awkward conversation, but maybe critical conversation.
Yeah.
I'll let you go through some more comments if you like as well.
I haven't read these books. I'm more of a Dune guy. Yeah, we can talk about Dune a little bit. I haven't read Dune. And I know a lot of negativity towards Sun Eater is that it's too derivative of Dune. And it almost seems like fan fiction. And these are just from comments I've seen. I don't hold these because I don't know. Yeah. I've seen the films of Dune Part 1 and Part 2 by Denis Villeneuve, and I love that. Sure, there are some elements where I think Hadrian is, okay, yeah, that's Paul. Okay, yeah, they're kind of a mix of Harkonnen as well as Atreides. Yep. You've got the shields, you've got the swords, that kind of stuff. So I can't really fully compare it to Dune, but I'm sure there are plenty of moments.
I mean, that Dune adaptation, I've only seen the first one, but it's very faithful to the book. So I think if you've seen the first half, certainly from what I've seen from the first Dune movie, they're quite comparable experiences in terms of the plot they're giving. I think there's a crossover there. I didn't feel it quite as strongly. I'm actually not the biggest Dune fan in general, but that's more for the narrative reasons or the point of view structure that Herbert chooses to make there. The other analogy I often hear people connect to Empire of Silence is Name of the Wind. I see a lot of people say it's Name of the Wind in space, which I kind of agree with and kind of don't agree with. I think maybe the first person narrative is doing a lot of the legwork there.
I don't agree with that at all. And Name of the Wind is my favorite book of all time. Yeah. I don't see the comparison at all. And it's because it's a framing narrative. It's the main character telling you his tale. Yep. I didn't get that because there aren't interludes into present time. Yeah. It's all just told through his words. Whereas Name of the Wind is it's an innkeeper and he's telling this guy his story and the guy is writing the story down. And in the middle of that story being told, you cut back to present time. Yes. That's if that happened in Sun Eater, then I'd be like, yeah, absolutely. But Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb is in a way a framing narrative. It's
first person.
Huh?
First person, tragic, yeah. Ticks all the same boxes. Yep.
Yeah. And I'd find more comparisons to those two, Name of the Wind and Assassin's Apprentice than Sun Eater.
Yes.
Yeah, I've never agreed with the thing, it's Name of the Wind in space.
I would agree to. It looks like the comments as well are with us on that, which is quite nice.
Yeah.
Hi, Chance.
Chase, how you doing? Or Chance, sorry. Goodness. I think I'm late, but love this book. I came on board without knowing much about the follow on books, and I'm sort of happy I did. That's awesome. That's awesome you were able to kind of go in blind. I do enjoy being able to go into a book blind without those, those waves of expectations. Yeah. Chase, nice. It's all right. I get that a lot. Yeah. Sorry about that. My eyesight, I think it's shot. It's getting worse.
I have the worst eyesight of anyone I know, so I'm with you on that. When I lose my glasses, I can't find them again, which is why I've got these big thick boys here. I think Name of the Wind in Space is I don't want to criticize people who say it because everyone, whatever. But I think it makes a misstep. I think it looks at that broad structural idea and doesn't get granular with it in the sense that both novels kind of deserve. Do you prefer Quoth? I mean, this is a bit of a leading question because I know it's your favorite book. But I was going to say, do you prefer Quoth or Hadrian? But maybe that's not the right way of framing it. Maybe
real quick,
is a better way.
No, I totally get that. Real quick, it's tough when you're comparing something.
Yes.
And we don't want to talk bad. Like, oh, hey, how dare you guys compare Name of the Wind and Sun Eater? It's like that is an easy way to tell others about a book series. Yeah. And I often give an elevator pitch of Name of the Wind, as in it's Harry Potter, but he has to pay for his tuition. Although it's far greater than that. It's just Harry Potter is such a well-known character that it'll get people be like, oh, okay, that's cool. So now to answer your question, I still prefer Quoth. And I read that book 4 years ago, and I still feel Quoth right here. I still remember him, his feelings, his character, his language, and his thoughts on the world. Hadrian, and just how it was presented, it's almost very melodramatic.
Yes.
And too negative to the point where it's like, gosh, I can't root for you. I don't want to root for you. I'm just trying to see if
it feels like he's playing kind of emo music in the background, doesn't it?
Yeah, it feels very much, I hate to say it, but Spider-Man 3.
Yeah, that's exactly the analogy. Yes.
That's the only way I can.
There's a song that I'll save this for the spoiler section, but there's certain music that kept coming to mind when I was reading.
Is it the same song from the Batman movie? Just that?
No. And I know that because I've watched Tutu Ramble's video on this, so I know they connect it to a certain song, but I've got a different song that was playing in my head. But I'm going to save it for the spoiler section because to articulate why this song kept replaying in my head, I need to get into that middle section of the book. So I'll save that for now. But I'm with you. He's melodramatic, and I think that's a conscious decision by Ruocchio. Yeah, this boy is and he's a boy. He's very verbose. He kind of wants to travel and see the universe. He's a little bit above it all. In a way, I mean, a lot of the book thematically is about the fact that we're set in these structures and we're basically just acting out the roles that have been prepared for us. And Hadrian, for better or worse, is one of the few people who is trying to break out of these roles. And how successful is he at doing that? So Hadrian looks at his brother, and this is kind of at the very beginning of the book, his brother, and he judges him, his father, and he judges him. There's a gang near the beginning, and he judges them to a certain extent. But what he fails to recognize is that all these people are basically set into motion by the system and the structure that has been perpetuated for thousands of years. So I think it's not Ruocchio's failing in the construction of Hadrian. I think he's absolutely doing what he's trying to do, but it doesn't make him for a very enjoyable human being to follow along with.
On Hadrian and kind of his view of the world, and I think it helps me going into the future books. Kind of what I talked about on the live stream with Joanna and Jake about kind of elves. Elves, they live long, long lives.
Yes.
Hadrian and his family, they live long lives, especially Hadrian with the genetics and how that's curated in that system of royalty. He is much younger than he actually is, but also he's older than he actually is, which is kind of almost a paradox. Like it's interesting because it's like, I would think he should know more at his age, but he's still a teenager. But like when you think of, I don't know, like a 40-year-old elf, it's like 40 years to human lives. I don't know. I'm not making much sense, but I'm trying to.
No, you're fine.
There's something off with his age and how much he should know and how naive he is. Because like, when I compare 15-year-old Quoth in Name of the Wind, that makes sense. 15 years is so young versus, the sci-fi world of, aging and growing and in the confines of that royal house that Hadrian's in. How old is he actually? And where's his maturity?
But you know what? I think I've said this in a previous video on my channel. I was like 20 years old and I was still an idiot. I had a lot of growing. I think it's different for each people. And maybe because Hadrian is so weirdly cloistered in the situation that he's in. He is the elite of the elites, but also in this very small bubble. So because he doesn't have many people to bounce off of except his brother, that might lend to a bit more naivete, even when he thinks he's this very clever, well-read person. Because what happens with Hadrian, right, is he has this character, and this is still relatively spoiler-free, it's the first 5% of the book. I think it's the first chapter of the book. He has this mentor called Gibson. And Gibson is the Dune quote man. That's what I call him. He's the Dune quote man. All the Dune references and all the Dune philosophy comes from this character called Gibson. And so he's got a lot of book learning, Hadrian, and he understands the worlds, and he's a very language-savvy guy, which is a huge theme here, that the language as a means of possible emancipation. But at the same time, he's desperately and hopelessly naive because he's grown up knowing about 4 people in some ways. And even the people he tries to connect with outside of that really don't want anything to do with him because of who he is. So I can kind of see it, but again, it doesn't make it very, very enjoyable for me to follow Hadrian. And what's interesting is that I've heard some people say after book 1, Hadrian gets into his own. And I've heard other people say that past book 1, Hadrian kind of stays a bit melodramatic and sullen. So I think that's going to be an interesting thing going forward is
it will be
how that goes. Hi, Jake.
Because it's another comment I got on my review is this is a villain story. This is not a good guy, apparently, from what I've read. And it's that's something to keep in mind. And I think viewing the next few books in a new lens of, hey, this story is told over hundreds of years. This is a villain story, a villain coming of age story. That's going to be something to be like, okay, keep those 2 points in mind. I think there'll be much more enjoyment in the future books. I feel like we haven't even really covered much. We're still talking broad.
We're spoiler-free, aren't we? Yeah.
We're still in spoiler-free. Is there any questions? What do we...
Let me give my broad praise of the novel and what it's doing very well, because I'm aware that we've been quite critical. And as I said in the outset, I still very much enjoyed it. I don't like giving numbers, but if I did, it would probably be like a 7 out of 10. Still really enjoyed my time with it. It was the middle section that dipped for me. What I think this book accomplishes marvelously is the writing style is fabulous. And if this was him age, I think was it Chance in the comments said that he was like 19 when he started writing it, then oh my goodness, this guy is going to be a master stylist by book 3 because the writing is incredible. I thought also the thematic complexity was very impressive for a very young author. We've got I spoke about some of them, and we can maybe get more granular with it later. I think the structural and the class system inherent here is very clever. I think the idea of language versus violence is something that is the biggest theme in the novel. At what point can language get us away from violence? And there was another one that I've written down. Let me just go to it. Yeah, naming an identity is the other one I wrote down here. The fact, can we get away from ourselves if we change our name and try to reconstruct ourselves? To what extent is that possible? And all these things sort of get juggled throughout the novel. Even when I wasn't enjoying the scenes or certain sections of the book, those themes kept coming back. And that's something that I really did vibe with. So I'll repeat it one more time before we move into spoilers. But if I am to judge this book by the first quarter and the last quarter, and those two quarters get propelled into even greater, greater magnitude, greater impressiveness in books 2 going forward, I am on board, baby. Okay, I'm there because I thought it was brilliant. But the thing that concerned me in this novel is that middle 50% bloat, which I felt was janky and jagged and strangely hollow from a plot perspective.
Extremely hollow.
Yes.
There wasn't emotional depth or investment, in my opinion. And I want that connection with a character. I was there in the beginning with the introduction to that relationship with his father, his brother. Oh my gosh, I just forgot.
Crispin.
Well, no, the Obi-Wan guy, the wizard guy, the
Gibson.
mentor. Huh?
Gibson. Tor Gibson.
Gosh, I wanted to sit there with them on the beach talking about how beautiful the world is. Give me more of that.
Yeah.
And give me 200 more pages of that introduction, of the inner workings of that relationship with Crispin, his father, his brother, and why he hates the arena.
Yes.
The Colosseum.
I have a lot to say about that in a minute.
You can't just give me one scene and say you hate it. Let me feel it a little more. Y'all are going to be fine if that's the parts you like or dislike.
Good. I trust you.
I'm so excited. Did he say beach? Okay, you know what? Maybe it's been a while since I've watched it.
It was a waterfront, wasn't it, when they had that conversation?
Or was it?
Gibson and Hrien.
It was like a waterfront. It was something. I thought it was like
the thing was he looks at the fish. This is not a spoiler. Well, it is, but it's first 10%. Hrien is looking at the fish, and Gibson says something along the lines of, "What are you thinking about?" And he says something really corny along the lines of, "I'm like a fish. I'm controlled by fate." And I'm like, come on, man. But then he also picks himself up in the novel and says, actually, that was a stupid thing to say. So I forgave him on that one. But yeah, they were definitely by some body of water.
Yeah, so I say beach. My bad.
Yeah, we'll forgive you. What I would say is one thing that's interesting me, and then I guess we maybe can move to spoilers.
Okay, let's go.
I'm interested in the comments because they're discussing and obviously book 7 isn't out yet, so this is still an open question. To what extent is Hadrian actually going to end up being a villain? Because the pitch is that he becomes Darth Vader, right? He becomes Darth Vader to some extent. He's even got a lightsaber on the cover if that's him. He constantly tells us there's a really, I'll be honest, a really bad line, but halfway through where he says something along the lines of, I just wish I had died there so the universe would be rid of the stink of me. Okay, Hadrian, you do you, man, chill. It's okay, it's going to be fine. But it could go either way because you get a lot of fiction like this where the bad guy genuinely turns out to be very, very, very bad. You get a lot of fiction where there is some kind of morally gray, my decisions were justifiable. And then you have the other kind of story where the good guy is actually a good guy all the way through, but maybe he yells at someone along the way.
Yeah.
And I want it to be that middle ground. I don't want Hadrian just to become the bad guy that we follow. And I don't want it to be that actually, no, he was a good guy. He just has a bad impression of himself. I think both of those would be missteps. And I'm curious which way the series is going to go. Based on how the novel ends, I think we're safe. I think it's going to be that middle bit where he is genuinely a gray human being. But it's
one more thing before we go into spoilers. An issue that I had with, I don't need that plot device. I don't need that MacGuffin. I don't. I like the natural side of life, the mundane. Yeah. I like living with, let's watch you through your daily routine and go shop for groceries. I love that. That's character investment and depth and all that stuff. But there wasn't that one thing throughout this book. There wasn't that kind of plot point that I was trying to follow until the very end. A little bit in the beginning where it's like, oh, you gotta, he's got to go somewhere. But at the end, there's that, oh, okay, now we have a goal or a mission. And I felt like that was if the whole point of the middle part was just him surviving, trying to get by, then cool. But I still never felt that. I never felt that one plot point that I was trying to follow throughout and get through. Give me a reason to flip the pages.
It's supposed to be the character of Hadrian itself, isn't it? That's supposed to propel you through.
Exactly.
And that's why the novel didn't quite do it for me in that middle half, because I didn't find Hadrian as compelling a character as necessary to justify the constant scene changes that were happening in that 25 to 75% mark.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I'm at with it. I think I've said everything I want to say spoiler free.
Okay.
But yes, I think broadly, if this is where you're getting off, thank you for joining us. But broadly positive, concerned about that middle 40, 50%, but based on the comments, that is usual, and we will be fine.
Okay, so everyone, we are going into spoilers for book 1. So if you haven't read the book, I think you should potentially hop off. Ooh, I love this comment. Real quick, Fitz Hadrian quote. Well, I don't love it. I didn't realize Hadrian's in the middle. I just saw Fitz, and I'm like, I love Fitz. But yeah, that's interesting. But maybe I'll love Hadrian more. But yeah, we are going into spoiler section. We're going to be talking about this book still in depth. So if you guys want to chime in to, if you've read this book, chime in and give us your thoughts for book 1 only. Please don't spoil book 2.
Yeah. And Midnight, I've not read Red Rising. I have book 1 next door. It's just one of these series that, here's the issue, right? I have so many book 1s next door. And at the same time, I have about 10 different series open right now, especially because I've been doing the self-pub combos on my channel. I've got so many book 1s that I've started on or finished. And I'm so wary about starting a new series when I've got so many open. I think what I'm going to do is I want to finish R. Scott Baker stuff. I was very, very, very into that. I want to finish Robin Hobb. I've got about 7 books of her left. I want to finish Philip Chase's Idan trilogy. That's going to be very high up my list. So there's a few open series that are my priority. And when I close those down, I'm going to start the next batch. Red Rising's up there, absolutely. And Dandelion Dynasty is up there off the top of my head.
Okay. I love it. I love it. Yeah, I'm at the point where I'm like, life is going to get really busy for me in a week, just because wedding season is coming up, and usually it's just go. So,
I didn't think about the fact that that's seasonal for your job.
Yeah, I mean the off season is still very busy because you're marketing, you're analyzing your business, you're reflecting, and you're trying to grow it and evaluate and make changes. But when the creative work comes and the actual contractual work comes, it's go. So I think what I want to do for reading, I want to try to read some standalones coming up, because I want to read self-contained stories. So then when I pick up a book, I'm like, okay, this isn't just one book in a series, so if I read Carrie by Stephen King, it's going to be a short little book. It's one story. It's not going to take much.
11/22/63. If you're going to do a Stephen King, I think.
See, that's the thing. I want short books right now.
No. But trust me, Thomas.
I know. I trust you. Everyone on my channel is talking about that.
Okay. Don't let me dictate to you, but also let me dictate to you that if you're going to read a Stephen King book, that it's going to be one that you like. It's going to be 11/22/63, and I guarantee you the comments are going to say yes on that. I think you'd also enjoy The Dark Tower, but Dark Tower also has a slightly wonky book 1. Also, I don't know if you talked about this with Jake and Joanna. I might have missed it because I was in and out of that live stream. But GGK would be right up your alley.
Yeah,
Guy Gabriel K. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's tough. But I don't know where my mind wants to go with reading right now, because I just haven't been reading as much. But anyways, let's dive into what we're talking about. Let's go.
Can I tell you about the song that's been playing in my head ever since I read the book?
Okay.
Are you familiar? It's a very British song, so maybe not. I think it's British. The song called Common People.
No.
Okay. You want to live like common people? No. Right. Okay. This song, I'm not missing anymore.
That sounds up Hadrian's alley.
This is the issue. Okay. When I used to live in Japan, the first round, I have a friend called Jack, and Jack's favorite thing was to go to karaoke at about 10 p.m. at night and sing this song to death. So it's stenciled onto my mind. But what this song is all about, and it's 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes. You'll find it on YouTube. It's about a woman, or like a young adult, who comes from Greece or somewhere, and she came from Greece. She had a thirst for knowledge. That's what it was. She comes to the UK and she says, "I want to live like common people," and she decides to slum it with the working class of Britain. And so she wants to shop in all the cheap supermarkets and do the deals and all that kind of stuff. And the song is basically an anthem against that kind of person who basically does poverty porn, I guess is the word, where they slum it with the people who are really struggling financially and really actually suffering. Because they want to see what it's like. And I think that's part of the reason I had distaste for Hadrian, because I understand from a plot perspective that when he gets onto Imesh, and I love the setting of Imesh, I think that big red sun, the heavy gravity is really effective.
Yep.
And I know that if he goes back to his dad, he's going off to the Chantry. I know it's more complicated than that, but I just kind of felt like I didn't care about his time on Imesh because he always had this escape hatch. And while he was slumming it with people who were suffering around him, it didn't really it didn't endear himself to me. It did the opposite, because I'm like, listen, there are ways for you to get out of this. And I refuse to believe you can't think of any of the ways to get out of this. It felt very self-indulgent. And maybe this is a very controversial opinion that people are going to fight me on, but it almost felt self-indulgent for him to be staying on that planet for so long, because he essentially wanted it felt to me like a poverty vacation. And I know that's not how it's supposed to come across. I know that's not what Ruocchio's going for, but it kind of ticked me off as I was reading that 25 to 50% mark. Okay. It felt like, and this is the thing about Hadrian, right, is that he is long-lived and does have some wealth behind him, at least for the majority of the novel. So, and
he's got good genetics.
You can talk about this in the book, but wasting time and slumming it with these people for 10 years or 5 years is a privilege. You know what I mean? Like, see, if I had some really horrible financial thing happen to me, and I spent 5 years of my life living in really desperate times, that's 5 years of my life. That is a huge chunk of my existence that has been that is hardship. But for Hadrian, it's not. It's something he can experience, glean some life memories from, develop his character, and then escape out of it. So I found that second quarter quite challenging to get through, because Hadrian's journey didn't resonate with me. And the song Common People kept coming into my mind for that reason. Did I talk too much?
No, that's interesting. That's because I didn't look at it like that. I looked at it, but I actually agree with that. That very well can be true. I didn't look at it through that when I was reading it.
So Jake, sorry to interrupt. Jake just commented he was stuck in Imesh against his will. I could be wrong. And sorry, Thomas, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, please.
My understanding is that he still has the ring that allows him to basically call Dad at any point. We find out later that actually Dad has disowned him, but he is able to basically just say, "Listen, I am." He gets the ring back pretty early on, right? From the depot or the shipyard. He does get that back fairly early. And even if he doesn't, he still has his genetic code. So I refuse to believe he could not call Dad at any time. And I understand that that's also a bad option because he doesn't want to go to the Chantry. But when he's sitting there going, I had to, eat rats or whatever it was, I'm kind of like, okay, man, but you didn't have to eat rats. You're choosing to make this choice. So I can already see in the comments that's quite controversial, which is fine by me.
Yeah.
I could be misunderstanding the book. I'll be the first to admit it. But this is part of the reason in the spoiler-free section that I was saying that Hadrian kind of ticked me off in that middle 50%. And it's because I didn't fully agree with the choices he was making, or his perspective on the choices he was making. And I will shut up there.
For me, it's less about that perspective, although I think I can actually see it, but I'm not there like 100%. I am more of an immersive reader, and I like to know the ins and outs of the society, day-to-day life. And I wanted that part on Imesh, where he's been dumped, like that's a big part in a character's story, in a character's journey. And I wanted to see what day-to-day life, not little glimpses. I wanted to see, like, give me a week. Give me like, what would a week look like? That way I can feel, what it's like to, try to get food. What is it like to rob? And what are the potential consequences? And I just didn't feel that. And then, Kat comes in, and that relationship felt very rushed. Although
Yes,
I
I would
know
agree.
it could have been impactful. I think the way it was written, her death scene it was really well done, but I wanted a little more before that so then I could truly feel the loss and the longing.
Yes.
My biggest gripe is very much how, let's see, right here. He found a way to get out of it by fighting in the Colossus, except that it went completely against his morals. So blah, blah, all that stuff. So my issue is in the very beginning, he hates the Colossus, the Colosso, whatever. Doesn't like Crispin fighting.
Yes.
Can't stand to watch him.
Yes.
Give me more of that in the beginning. Give me the reasons why. Give me that feeling and that kind of that pressure.
Yes.
That way, and then also I wanted him to be thrown in to the Colossus
Yes.
against his own will. The fact that he just went up to it of his own volition and is just like, yeah, cool, put me in.
Yeah.
So easily. Where is the fear? Where's the trepidation? That really made me it made me care much less. Like I was like, wow, really? That was too easy. I wanted him to get caught, maybe thrown in prison, something, and just thrown in there against his will, because then you're like, oh my gosh, he's been running away from the Colosso his whole life.
Yes.
And here he is thrown in here. How impactful, what a journey that would be to follow.
I was reading or skimming through the book this morning during my lunch hour to kind of see if my perception of anything had changed, remind myself of the plot. And one thing that I felt like, because I've been reading it on Kindle, which I don't want to do. So that's why I said to you, I think privately, let's read Howling Dark summertime or after summertime if you're too busy. But I want that paper book in my hands. But I was noticing, looking at the Kindle percentage points, how much space each section took. The cat section is like 6%. The Imesh section is about 7%, like when he's by himself. It felt like we were reading a 250-page, I'm going to say it fully ironically, given my last YouTube video, PowerPoint presentation on what happened to him. Or, here are my holiday snaps in a way, because it didn't feel like we were staying with anything long enough. So someone said in the comments, I found Kat's death hugely traumatic and well written. I thought that scene was well written, but I didn't feel like that cat section overall had that resonance with me because it was so fast.
Yeah.
It's interesting seeing these comments down below, actually. And I do appreciate the pushback on what I said. It just felt a bit wrong to me spending so long with him loitering around, feeling sorry for himself. And I saw someone in the comments said as well, listen, that could be depression. I think that's a valid interpretation.
Yeah.
I wouldn't disagree with that. But maybe, I don't want to be careful what I say here, but it didn't come across as on the page, it kind of just came across as morose. I wonder if rereading it after I get through the whole thing, if I would have a different perspective there. His life in bullet points, Chris. Yeah. You made this point in your video as well. Life in bullet points. Yeah. This is why I made a good PowerPoint slide on you, Chris. You're absolutely right.
This isn't so much about I don't know, bashing the book. We don't know what everyone else knows.
Yes.
Who have read the past, 5 other books.
Yes.
They know, like, hey, it pays off. Hey, you're going to see this.
Yeah.
We don't know that. So we're only, viewing this through the lens of just book 1.
Yes.
So if we do sound negative, it's only through that potential, just skewed lens.
Yes.
My only thing that I talk about in my review of this or reflection of this is I focus on pacing greatly. I fixate on it through my work as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Through what I long for and yearn for in films and stories and books. And I know everything's going to have different pacing and everyone's going to have their own different tastes in pacing. And it's just what I want in a book is slower pacing. Just that a few more seconds in that scene. Let that moment breathe a little more. And I felt like I just couldn't breathe in a moment. I just kept going, boom, boom. Right when I was settling in, I was thrown into something new. And kind of like, what Chris says here is his life is in, bullet points. It felt like very little vignettes, just little brief vignettes, and I couldn't get invested in that. So that's where I'm coming from. So whatever I say, it's through that perspective.
You've got a good comment from Isamwise. I don't mean to skip down because there's lots of good stuff happening.
Very much so, yeah.
Directed for you that I think is interesting.
I mean, it is absolutely subjective. Absolutely. There's films that, or there's stories and films that take, I don't know, a page or a minute to get across something so profound, and it's done really well. And then there's other films that take 10 minutes to get that same thing done, and it takes a little too long. It's all feeling and subjective for sure. I just thought pacing is subjective. It absolutely is subjective.
Who calls Name of the Wind a thriller?
Who's that's very
name names Isamwise.
Yeah, we'll find that person and ask them questions because I don't know about that.
Yeah. Can I just I spoke about the themes that I really love them. The huge thing that I enjoyed about this novel immensely was how the themes kept coming back. And I have a wee series of bullet points here on one of the themes that kind of encapsulates something that I thought was so well done about this novel. And it was the idea of language versus violence, that question of when language is suitable, when violence is suitable, do the two complement each other and do the two oppose each other? So what I have just here is a list of ways in which this theme comes out throughout the text, just skimming through it this morning, because once you start to notice it, it bleeds off the page. So here's my list of different ways language versus violence comes across. First of all, you've got that idea of Hadrian as using language to end wars. That's actually the quote that he uses about 2/3, 3/4 through the novel when he encounters the Cielsen. We haven't even spoken about the Cielsen, by the way.
No.
He tries to use his language to end a conflict, and he says in a flashback, in retrospect, how naive I was. And I love that layering there. He is, when there's a torture scene going on, and this is what I loved about the end of the novel. I love that whole torture sequence while also trying to break him out. And that grayness of what Hadrian is doing there, I thought was phenomenal. But he is, again, using language as a mediator to both encourage violence and allow the violence to take place. The purposeful violence, the violence that is going to get the truth for the chantry. Again, that language and violence then going hand in hand. I've got the whole idea of Hadrian's genetic code being a language in and of itself. He carries something of his genetic material. His genetic material is sought after as a commodity, just as well as the fact that he knows 5 or 6 languages makes him sought after as a commodity, right? The whole idea that Mataro, I think his name is Mataro, the Duke, he wants Hadrian, first of all, for his language prowess. There's also the breeding element there.
Yes.
The Umant, I think that's how you pronounce them, that race, the sort of squiddy boys, tree squid boys. The fact that we can't understand their language, it's more like dolphin song, and that miscommunication disallows us from seeing the micro uprising that happens at one point. I love the detail as well that Crispin is, I've written this down. So we have Hadrian's central conflict is trying to escape violence and not being able to, right? He walks out of the Colossal. What actually happens is he immediately gets thrown into violence. He can't escape it. And there's another moment as well where, and I'm getting really excited. This is the stuff I breathe, man. The other moment I loved in the book, this theme of language versus violence, when Hadrian has that conflict with Crispin, and Crispin is winding him up, and Crispin doesn't even know he's winding him up. It's about his mentor who breathes language, and how does Hadrian respond to it? He hits him with a book, and I love that detail. I don't know if it's intentional or not. It doesn't really matter. The author is I don't know if you've heard of The Author is Dead, but we're not supposed to really rely on what the author thinks. Hadrian hits Crispin with a book, which for me, like 10% into the novel, I'm going on a roll here, perfectly encapsulates, I think, so many of the thematic concerns of this novel. The idea that even as Hadrian is holding this book to try and escape, that is his means of escape originally, he uses it as a means of violence.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many aspects to this conflict that goes on throughout the novel. I've written here, violence is celebratory. It's also a means of subjugation. Alistair says straight up to Hadrian, we allow the violence because otherwise there'd be uprisings. And I think one thing that again, if he was 19 when he's writing this, Christopher Ruocchio, these explorations are going to be coming, and especially when you've got so much more text to go, this layering of theme, I think, is going to be one of the things I look forward to most in Sun Eater. I don't know if I'm just monologuing endlessly.
No, I want you to. I think you're preaching to the choir here. Yeah.
I think it's such a brilliant handling, and it's never. Well, sometimes it is a bit too explicit for my liking. But if Ruocchio was such a juvenile author at that point, then I think it is phenomenal. And again, it's the reason I think Chris said in the comments, everyone looks forward to book 2, and this is one of the reasons I'm looking forward to book 2. And that also ties into the theme of naming and identity, right? Who am I? I'm Hrien Gibson. Does that work? No. And then Hrien doesn't understand cat in the beginning. He says, cat, is that short for Catherine? And she goes, no, it's just cat. And there's almost a language block there because he can't communicate with people outside of his own social structure because he linguistically has been built differently. So, yeah. I sound wise, I giggled. Well done. Early on, we see Hrien looking down on Crispin for the gladiator games with a nice riff on violence, but then he signs up for the same stuff his brother was doing. And as well with that whole sequence and the Colossal, what is the Colossal mainly? But people acting out their parts, even in the Colossal, where they're using violence as a means to redeem themselves and kind of escape.
They're also painting people.
Yeah, they're portraying famous battle scenes from the past.
Yeah.
So I think that aspect of the novel was brilliant, and that's why
for me it's
whoa, I loved it.
I'm so happy you love all that. Like, I guess for me, it's like I would, pick up on a lot of these deeper themes, or deeper meanings when I'm able to kind of sit in it a little longer. And I guess because everyone's brain is different in the way we absorb and metabolize. I'd be able to feel that more and be like, but I definitely did pick up on, the historical context of the Colosso and masks and very much so the I guess the cultural view of the Cielsen, and how they paint other people, the prisoners and all that to, look like that because they want everyone else to fear the Cielsen.
Yes.
And celebrate that violence.
Yes.
So yeah.
And the Cielsen themselves are so interesting as well, aren't they?
Yeah.
That Hadrian is really the only one who can communicate with them. And where does that lead him? It leads him mainly to communicate to the Cielsen that they're going to die. I mean, that's the main function that he portrays here, is that he leads these people to their deaths. And also language and violence. The other thing as well is that Crispin says at the beginning, they're cannibals, they eat people, and Hadrian's really the only one, and he makes the faux pas at the dinner table, but I was kind of with him on this one. No, because I'm with him, but it's a valid point that no, they're eating us, we're actually of a different species. Technically it's not cannibalism. But at the same time they are people, because Hadrian's able to communicate with them and have that intercultural communication. I really adored that, and I think that's why that last 25% really worked for me. It wasn't just the violence. Thanks, Chance. It wasn't just the violence and that really amazing fight scene at the end. It was the discussion that was happening between these two radically different cultures. I have a theory, and I could be totally wrong, and maybe I'm going to have lots of egg on my face, but I think the Cielsen are in some way more connected to humans, possibly even genetically, than is we're led to believe. I mean, there's something that's said in the beginning about the fact that, hey, these guys are two-eyed, limbed, bipedal structures with thought process proximal to ours. So my secret theory, I could be totally wrong, is that there is some kind of greater link between the Cielsen and humanity than we are so far led to believe. And
that's the exciting thing. I think that's what gets me pumped. It's that kind of, it's that trope, of aliens. Being out there and we're getting invaded by aliens. And then it's like, but the aliens are actually potentially the good guys. Or
that's the Chantry or the bad guys.
That's the cool thing about this, is it's so layered. And that's what really got me into the book, when we got into the politics and the opinions and the different perspectives at that table and in those conversations, because I'm just like, that's what I live for. And
am I right? Sorry to interrupt you. Finish your thought.
No, that's it.
I was going to say that, was it you who told me, someone told me that Ruocchio converted to Roman Catholicism from atheism. Yep. Is that right? Because I'd be very interested to see if the chantry is handled differently at all or not as the series progresses. Because for me, the chantry felt like the worst. I mean, this is not felt like to me. It is. It's the worst excesses of organized religion. And obviously, Roman Catholicism is one of the emblems of organized religion. So I don't know if that at all alters. I guess I'll find out. Ruocchio's,
and that was
the chantry.
That is one thing that I'm like excited to see. Maybe an Easter egg.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think one of my other criticisms of the novel is that the chantry are almost too bad. And listen, there are analogies for this in the real world. There are totalitarian structures, and there's totalitarian structures that are enmeshed in religion. So I'm not saying that it's unrealistic, but sometimes I'm like, the chantry are pretty much, they feel irredeemable. And I wonder if that's something that's going to change going forward. Not even because of his conversion to Roman Catholicism, but maybe just a greater level of complexity. Yeah, well done. Yeah, the author was dead 5 minutes ago. What I wanted to say to Stephen Erickson was, the author is dead unless they agree with me. But yeah, I think I'm curious to see. The chantry is more pseudo-pagan than Catholic. Yes, sorry. Just to be clear, I'm not trying to say, Samwise, that they are analogous. Or I guess I am. I'm not saying they're the same, but that is the connection that was kind of being drawn in my mind, at least. But yeah, I guess Earth being the divine presence in this novel would make it slightly more paganistic. Yeah.
So I'm just reading the comments right now.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm trying to see if there's anything else I wanted to say in my Google Doc. I love the character of Kyra at the beginning. That Hadrian thinks there's something going on, and then that realization for him that I am unable to connect with this human being as much as I want to because of the structures that are in place in this world. I thought that was well done. You made me laugh. Don't worry about it, Aaron. Elu. Yeah, you made me laugh.
And then I'm excited to, this ancient civilization and these visions.
Yep. Yes, absolutely.
That's a little something to.
And that theme as well of divine destiny. It's a bit more on the nose, perhaps. The idea that humanity's biggest failing in this novel is that they believe they are the inheritors of the universe. Almost like the Americas, 200, 300, 400 years ago. That it's ours to claim, and what the chantry are doing are basically perpetuating that myth. And then you have the quiet coming in and complicating that, because the Cielsen believe themselves to be the inheritors of the quiet. So that whole thing I find really engrossing. I'm a bit worried about the quiet because I've read so many books and played so many games that have the precursor race. So it's a bit of a trope. So I'm curious to see how it's going to be handled. I've read all of Lovecraft, Samwise. I had a Samwise. Say again?
I'm okay with tropes, but
yes.
As long as they're done well, and it's something I don't think I've mentioned on this stream, that this is my first dive into sci-fi.
Oh, really?
So going into this, it was very it was a learning curve with at least picturing things.
Yes.
And every author has different writing styles and prose, and navigating that and getting used to that takes time sometimes. This was definitely a learning curve for me with Ruocchio's word choice. It's very someone mentioned archaic.
Yes.
And it was a lot, but I think, the more I got into it, I was like, okay, this is it. And the more I'm settling into Hadrian's mind. Yeah.
Chris had an interesting time with that. So when I was watching his video, Chris, I hope you don't mind me paraphrasing you. Chris, have you watched Chris's video? It's worth watching, Thomas. Chris said something along the lines of he was struggling with the vocabulary and word choice and syntax. And he actually posted on Reddit, I believe, Chris, you said, should I keep going with this novel if I'm having such a hard time with the language on the page? And I think you said that Christopher Ruocchio's wife reached out to you, Chris, and said, yes, keep going. And also it's a very good exercise in building that reading muscle, which as a teacher I'm all about. But it was interesting that you got a contact from the family saying it is worth continuing for this reason.
Yeah, and it's funny, fantasy, this is sci fantasy. I believe that's what Christopher Ruocchio claims it to be.
Science fantasy, yeah.
Yeah, science fantasy. I think it's very common and easy for us to picture castles, picture taverns and forests and trails weaving between a valley or, switchbacks on a mountain. Whereas sci-fi is very, a spaceship can be anything. I could picture a tavern very quickly. A spaceship is or a flyer can be, it's so many more variables. A sci-fi shield, I don't know, like there's signposts in sci-fi, I think, are a little more different. I don't know. If I can't, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but it's
fantasy feels more easy to initially track because it's usually it's following a landscape that we're somewhat familiar with. Would that be fair?
No, absolutely. And I think of Dune, the Dune films, like that's a vision of sci-fi, but that is completely different from Blade Runner.
Yes.
And Star Wars. Like, you say a spaceship and you've got 50 different spaceships between those three franchises.
Yeah.
So it's very tough to, I'd say, picture that and try to jump on those words and metabolize those. When, Christopher is saying, okay, what's a ground car? He's saying there's ground cars and there's castles and it is very tough. That took some time for me to grasp, and even still hard to grasp. Throughout the reading of this book. So to engage with the words and the story and the themes and the characters, I had that obstacle.
There's a bit more of a cognitive load going on for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The comments are generally agreeing with you as well. I think for me, I'm not a huge sci-fi guy. I'm more of a fantasy guy, but one of my favorite series of all time is Hyperion. And I read this, but it's phenomenal. It's so good. And I read it in 2018. So I had this experience reading Hyperion, where I bounced off Hyperion about 4 times, and it was the first couple of pages. Just really didn't. I just smashed off, and then But eventually, when you sink into that point and you reach that point where you understand what the author's doing, it does become easier. It does metabolize, as you said.
Yeah. It's line upon line, precept upon precept. Like, you're just like, boom, 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 just like with anything.
Can I rewind to something I think it was Samwise said about me and H.P. Lovecraft, or the both of us in H.P. Lovecraft? I don't know if you've read any Lovecraft yourself. I
have not. I have not.
10:38 p.m. he said it, and it caught my eye, and I wanted to get back to it. I love Lovecraft as much as one can love Lovecraft, given how awful he is in some respects. But about 3-4 years ago, I like to always have an ongoing project, some kind of author's corpus or complete works that I slowly chew my way through. And it was Lovecraft it was during COVID, so it would have been about 4 years ago. And I had a really wonderful time with H.P. Lovecraft, who is the most vocabulary intense writer you'll ever come across. He just throws in words like antediluvian just for breakfast. But what he does is, again, he is the guy for cosmic horror. And I've heard horror being articulated as the moment you realize that things are irrevocably changed forever for the worse. And I think from what I hear, that's a lot of what Sun Eater does going forward. I've heard the words cosmic horror bandied about with Sun Eater a lot, and I love that. I love having an existential crisis on a Monday night. It's something that really kind of gels with me as those kind of deeper, slightly almost scary thoughts, if that's not too strange to say. But I'm a huge fan of cosmic horror for that reason. Those kind of big philosophical, sometimes quite scary questions. So one of the reasons I was really keen to read this series is because of the cosmic horror element that comes in. So
wow, I didn't even know that.
Leave it with me, because that is something I'm looking forward for.
I did not even know that there is that potential aspect. So
apparently it does this, yeah.
Okay, I like that, because it makes the characters seem microscopic, and I like that a lot.
Yeah. You will not be disappointed, says Jake. Yeah, I think Preacher made one of his thumbnails just "This is cosmic horror now," which you don't really get much of a sense of from book one. I mean, I know you have the quiet, and that the fact that that dig site is created from, I might be getting this wrong, the absence of atoms. It's pure black. There's no molecular structure to it. Yeah, and that's what Samwise is saying here. But that's the only whisper I got. Everything seemed quite surprisingly grounded. So I guess we'll see where it is.
Yeah, grounded. In the scheme of sci-fi, which is already pretty crazy. But there was a lot of there's tangible aspects that you can relate to. What else do you have? Because I'm again, this is all I have.
So one criticism I have, we're actually reaching the end of my Google Doc.
Okay, good.
But so I've got Gibson as the Dune quote character. I wrote that down. He is the one who speaks about emotions and tampering them. Another flaw I had with the series is that the characters in that middle section, if we can return to that middle section, just felt like a propulsion mechanism for Hadrian. And I think this is the reason Kat's death didn't really bother me. It's why I think even someone like Gibson, when he got tortured, that didn't really bother me. These characters often didn't feel very whole. They felt like means for Hadrian to have a moment of self-discovery so we could move on. And I found that even someone like Swift was maybe the least of them, but even someone like Swift and what's the love interest called? Valka? They were the two exceptions, but I would say most other people kind of felt a bit more of a propulsion mechanism than a real character. So I've written that down. And I also said the Colossal was a little bit unearned. So what you said earlier, and that's my
it felt very. These other characters didn't feel real; they were very hollow, and that again just takes away potential investment going forward.
Yes,
and whenever you see kind of that veneer, you're just like, oh, okay. You kind of see behind the curtain. You're like, oh, okay, that's what this is.
Yes.
You just don't care anymore going forward. I know that's kind of harsh, but it's like, oh, these are all just kind of signposts.
Yes.
Going forward. And these aren't real people. I have nothing to look forward to.
Mm.
But when you meet someone so human and three-dimensional as a character in the beginning, and that's what I thought I was getting in Gibson.
Yes.
And even I love the way his father was written, but I just wanted more of it.
Alistair's fabulous. Yeah. And Crispin too, I think.
I like Crispin. I love all that. Just give me more of that. Give me a whole book of that first 25%.
It's why the first quarter works so well. And then that middle bit is because you're basically just stuck with Hadrian and his band.
Give me that.
And
because
Hadrian and his band is not nearly as interesting.
When he gets dumped, you're like, oh my gosh, he lived a royal life and now he's a peasant, below a peasant, and I'm like, yes, give me that. And the friendships in the Colosso felt very forced.
You could see where it was going, couldn't you? As
soon as he where it was going, when it's predictable.
Yeah.
When it's predictable, that's when I'm like, dang it.
Yeah. I will say though, again, that last 20, and this is the last thing I have in my Google Doc. I just want to shine a light again. I spoke about how much I love the language and how much I love the themes. I felt like that last 20%, that interrogation sequence where Hadrian is realizing he's screwed up, first of all, by doing this put down your weapons thing, and he's created more harm than good. Him both being involved in the interrogation, even when he says he's not really and he doesn't want to be there, he is also actually kind of manipulating and finding out more information. from the Sealson. Like, he can't help himself. At the same time, he genuinely does have empathy for, I forget the name of the Sealson who is tied up. And this all comes to fruition where he tries to do this escape sequence, and then the alien falls to the floor because the lights go out and the power goes out, and he's held up by, I think, electric magnetic clamps. I think that's what happens. And I love that whole sequence because when the alien stands up, it's so cinematic. This 9 foot tall, lanky, gray, white, bestial person who is now looking at Hadrian with absolute menace, and they're having a conversation fight. And I often find that conversation fights feel a bit janky, a bit like, okay, can you either have a dialogue or have your fight? But no one does this in real life. But it felt very well done there.
It is also a space opera.
Yeah, it's
done extremely well. Mention this.
Yeah,
this whole series is a space opera. So that's also something to keep intact. That, like, hey, some of the cheesiness is actually kind of fun.
And I enjoyed that cheesiness, but I thought that atmosphere, what I said previously was I think Ruocchio was really good at broad scale atmosphere and setting. When he first walks out the door in Imesh, he sees that big boiling red sun and he feels the gravity. Or when we start in Empire of Silence and we have this very gothic kind of construction. These are all wonderful, big, broad setting descriptions. But it was that scene where suddenly the clamps fall down and he stands up and the lights are flickering and the klaxons are going off and he's staring Hadrian down, having just killed the guard. That scene for me was like, oh my goodness, okay, this man, whoever wrote it, this teenager, can absolutely do the small scale settings. It was phenomenal. And I loved that whole interrogation to the death of that character whose name escapes me, the Sealson. That 15% sequence was genuinely some of the best sci-fi writing I've read so far. Which is why I'm so up and down, because when it's firing on all cylinders, it's firing on all cylinders. Yeah. So, Chris, you do need to reread those last 25%, because they are the best part of the book. I think Uvanari,
before I read book two, I might just, I don't know where that chapter would be, but just kind of start at the last quarter of book one. Because it's been a while for me, and I know it's crazy. It's like, oh, how could you forget so quickly? But when a book doesn't stick with you, it just happens. Yeah. And I think that's just natural, and that's okay. Sadly for me, I'm very wishy-washy where what I remember and what I don't remember. But ending on a positive note, like, we're going in to book two. We're going into book three, hopefully. I at least want to give this to book three.
I'm on board as long as you are, unless something catastrophic happens and our book two is an absolute disaster. But I've not seen anyone say that book two is a disaster. Temper my expectations this time, because I'm being the victim of my own hype again.
No, everyone's hyping up book two. That's the thing. It's hyping up even more, and I'm just like,
But I want to read a physical copy. I'm done reading on my phone. And I should say this as well to kind of qualify what I'm saying. I did read it on my phone, my Kindle app, because I'm in Kuwait and books are hard to find. So I'm heading back to Scotland mid-June. I have Howling Dark waiting for me. So around about that time, there's a couple of other books I need to get to, including Chance's book, if he's still in the chat. But it's one of my priorities to get to is Howling Dark.
Yeah.
So take it slow. Take as long as we need to. I know you're busy with your wedding photography paraphernalia. So but I'm willing to keep going as long as you are, because although I was critical, I think we both said that broadly it was positive. It was just this one section that unfortunately didn't land.
Yeah, like there's books where I'm like, I DNF it. I didn't DNF this. I saw it all the way through. And when you view something through the eyes of like, hey, this is a series, keep reading. At least give it, give it to book two. At the very least. For me, I'm giving it to book three, and just seeing if it grabs me fully. Yeah.
You could always audiobook it.
No. No. This I want to read the words. I like that. Yeah, I'm just not an audiobook guy as much.
Listen, I respect your opinion on audiobooks. For me, it's a functional thing. It's the amount of time I have.
Those are the comments I've been getting on my video. There are some people that thought my video was like looking at it at the eyes of, that argument of, hey, do audiobooks count as reading?
Yes. I don't think you were doing that.
I wasn't. I already made a video on that, and I already said my opinion on that. And that's not the point. And I've changed sides on that, but it's pointless. Whether it's reading or not, I think at this point in 2025, with technology and people's time and preferences, that's not the point. For me, it's just, I like physical, I like words, I like, it's relaxing to me, sitting down with a physical book.
But you're quite really, so you're quite a sensory tactile person. You strike me as, right? It's all about those little moments. And if you're just have it here,
what do you mean?
I mean that for you, part of the reading experience is getting your coffee and opening the book and feeling the page on your fingers, having that moment of quiet. Maybe bringing down the lighting a little bit. I don't know, but you enjoy that experience. You're not just there to get the words inside your head. And I understand why for you that the audiobooks would not be that route.
Yeah. Audiobooks for me, I feel like I'm disrespecting the book. I'm disrespecting the initial intent. Although audiobooks are provided by the author and the collaboration with the narrator and the publisher and whatnot, it's great. But for me, it's this is quiet time.
Yeah.
The world is fast. The world is loud.
Yeah.
I don't want words blaring in my ears all the time. And something I didn't really go full detail into my video is that, movies have pacing. They have lulls, they have highs, they have lows. And in an audiobook, it's a narrator just reading to you.
Yes.
And it's constant. There are no breaths. There are no like pauses and like bits of music. It's you're being read to, and it just becomes overloaded. It's like, okay.
I think for me,
focused on it.
Yeah. For me, it very much depends on the text, and it depends on the narrator. So Dungeon Crawler Carl, everyone references as the prime example of audiobook. So if you don't like that one, or you prefer reading compared to that, then it's game over. But for that one, I mean, you've got the author and the narrator collaborating on Dungeon Crawler Carl. I would also say that the prose of Dungeon Crawler Carl lends itself very well to narration.
I agree.
Shay is just saying in the chat that the narrator of Sun Eater does a great job. However, to be honest, man, I would think I would struggle to audiobook Sun Eater. There's too much going on per paragraph, and I think I would lose the thread very quickly. Audiobooks I find are very good for a reread as well. If I'm rereading a series that I've already finished previously, then I would prefer to go the audiobook route. I think there's certain series. I think Dungeon Crawler Carl is great. Stephen King in general, great for audiobooks. The Wandering Inn, great for audiobooks. And Dresden Files is a fabulous. If you ever get into the Dresden Files, it's a bit okay. Dresden File fans, don't come at me. It's not the deepest series in the world, but it's great. It's great fun. And doing the Dresden Files by audiobook was a fabulous highlight for me a few years ago. My son was just born, and I was worried about whether I was going to be able to get into continue my reading journey with children. And this was a real concern for me, especially because say again?
When was your son born? Wait, when did this happen?
2020. He was born during COVID.
Okay. All right. You made it sound like it just happened. I was like,
it feels like it.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think Samwise, you said that you have a kid as well, so you might be familiar with this. When your wife is or your spouse or your partner is about to give birth, everyone says to you, say goodbye to your free time. Your life is never going to be the same. Get ready to enjoy your life in 2-minute increments. And this was a genuine sense of fear for me, because I was like, listen, if that's the case, reading is a huge passion for me. Is one of my beloved parts of my life about to basically fritter away for the next few years? And the answer was no, broadly. Finding reading time is harder, like I won't lie. And I'm sure if there's any parents in the chat, they'll testify to that, and especially when your kids are 4 and 2, as mine are. At the same time, it is possible. And the thing that encapsulated that for me is the Dresden Files, because I got the Dresden Files. I read some of the novels, and I did some of it by audiobook. And I blasted through that series, I want to say about 3 or 4 months. And it was fabulous because it was a highly enjoyable series. It didn't take a high level of cognitive strain, although it was a very enjoyable story. I'd kind of put it on par with a Stephen King book. But at the same time, the audiobook narration, when I was doing something in my life, even just doing dishes, it allowed me to keep my reading going. So Dresden Files and audiobooks have a special place in my heart for that reason. And I still do it a lot.
Yeah. I think, I don't have kids, although I am married, and your schedule does change. And I know with kids, it will change. Time is something, you have to navigate and manage time, and it's going to be different, especially when you have kids. But it's never impossible. You have to just make sacrifices, and you just develop that discipline. You have to be like, okay, I'm carving out this time that I do have to read, versus just scrolling on Instagram, because it is so easy. We have that right there, and it's just too easy. And it's like, maybe I just want to shut my brain off because today was so exhausting. I think it is the obstacle isn't time. I think the obstacle is mental strength. And I'm missing the word, but it's just having that mental, like, okay, I do want to play this video game versus just playing, a story narrative video game versus, a shooter like Call of Duty, on my free time. And that's why things get pushed off, because, mental exhaustion. So audiobooking and all that,
I'm seeing Chris and Samwise jumping in as well. But I totally vibe with what you're saying. Like, there are some people who work like 2-3 jobs. My friend Anna, who was also on my PowerPoint, said this magnificently. She's like, listen, it is a privilege to be able to read. But generally, there are things generally in most people's lives that maybe you could. So I think Joanna said in the live stream with you and Jake that she limits her social media time. She has quite a hard cap on it, so that she can spend more time doing, what would you call it, more worthwhile stuff.
Exactly. It's all about sacrifice and pushing things to the side. And I have 3 kids, and on the major issue with reading at a certain time was that I was way too exhausted to do it. Yeah.
See, when your son, after a 2-hour bedtime, is down at like 10 p.m. and you've got to get up for work the next day. And my son's passed, thank goodness. And you're looking at the clock and you're kind of like, I want some me time, but also if I stay up any later, I'm going to regret it. And then you have this book just sitting for it. I remember that time has largely passed me now. I'm not sure if it is for yourself, but that level of exhaustion, just looking at a page, feels like stirring granite with your eyelashes. But it's good having kids. I like them a lot.
Hey, they're a gift for sure. And I know I will be very excited if and when that time comes.
Do you know what my son said to me the other day? And I'll finish with this and be like, I come up to him. He misbehaved a little bit, so we're having a cuddle. And I said to him, my son. He's like, what, Dada? I'm like, I love you more than anything in the world. And he looks at me, he goes, Dada. And I go, what is it? And he goes, how many subscribers do you have? And I was like, I need to stop talking about YouTube with my children in the room. If that's the first question he responds to, I love you.
I love it.
My kids are amazing. I love them to pieces.
Yeah. Ugh, that's funny. Well, I think we'll just kind of close out right there. Thank you to all who have hopped on and
appreciate you guys.
It's great. And David, thank you for joining this conversation and doing this buddy read, because we keep each other accountable and we encourage each other to read and keep pushing on. And even though you and I both kind of struggled in the middle, we came out up top. And,
I've enjoyed it immensely. We're going to do book 2. I've said to you previously off air, I call you a friend, and this was a great pleasure to do.
Book 2, booktube. Yeah. Absolutely. I call you a friend, and thank you all, and
bye guys. Thank you.
Until next time.